Welcome to WitchLit, a place to talk about the craft of writing and writing the craft. I'm your host, Victoria Raschke, author, publisher, witch, and nosy Scorpio. This is a slightly different episode of WitchLit, and I am here with 6 of my closest writer friends that we have all written a book together of short stories about cryptid shifters and romance and spiciness. And I'm going to basically do kind of a mini interview with all of them for you on the show. Everybody's going to introduce themselves, talk about their book, and then we'll do our game of chance question, which I've already rolled virtually, and they all got sex. So that's what we're going to talk about. And the book is called A Very Cryptid Christmas, and it comes out from Moontan Press on October 18th. So when you're hearing this, you can still pre-order, and it'll be available anywhere you can get ebooks then, and there should be a print copy available later. So I am going to do this in a way that I can keep track of, and I'm going to go the way people are on my screen. So I think that's mostly how they logged into this Zoom chat. I wish listeners could see their faces. So Gemma Snow, I am going to start with you. Introduce yourself and tell us about your story.
Hi, Victoria, or making sure that I'm saying the right names. And thank you so much for hosting us on this podcast. It's been such a pleasure working on these stories, and I'm so excited for everyone to read them. My name is Gemma Snow. I write erotic romance. I have historical, contemporary, queer, polyamory, cowboys, a little of everything. If you like it, I've probably written some of it. And some cowboys coming out right around the same time as this. So lots of fun stuff on the docket. And I actually have 2 stories in this anthology because it's just never enough work, right? So my first one is near and dear to my heart because I'm a Jersey girl. You can take the girl out of Jersey, but you can't take the Jersey out of the girl. So the first story is called The Devil in Her. And here's just a little blurb about it. Perpetual grad student and self-appointed relationship ruiner Winnie Klein has the habit of running when things get hard. That's how she finds herself alone in the oh-so-spooky New Jersey Pine Barrens on a research trip before Christmas. Well, alone except for the handsome, taciturn park ranger Easton Leeds, who definitely holds some secrets below the surface. The Pine Barrens have been home to Easton for centuries. After all, there aren't many places where the monster inside can run free without trouble. And being the famed Jersey Devil makes him one hell of a monster. Except trouble walks right through the door on Christmas in the form of a cheeky grad student who isn't afraid of adventure. Easton has built walls around his heart for a reason, but one night with Winnie might just be all it takes to tear them down for good. The Pine Barrens may be known for their haunts and spooks, but this Christmas Eve, Winnie and Easton might find something even more spectacular. They just have to be willing to trust in themselves and each other to find love truly worthy of the legends. And that was just my little homage to where I'm from. The Jersey Devil was like a true camp story growing up. But I was researching for this story, and I found this one guy who wrote all of the legends and all of the spooks and haunts. And I was reading his story about the Banshee of the Badlands, and I kind of fell in love with that one too. So I had to write a second story. If you guys can stand to hear my voice for one more second, here's the synopsis for that one. Take a deep breath. See, Jersey Girl comes up. Gracie O'Connor's just wants answers. It's been over a decade since her sister's disappearance in the heart of the Badlands, and her work as a crime reporter puts her right in the center of the investigation. When another girl goes missing, her sources send her to the Watchdog, an old trucker bar in South Dakota. Same old music, same old whiskey, same old cold, snowy night. What she could never have expected was Bridget, the striking, mysterious bar owner who has been keeping up with the details of the disappearances. Bridget, who speaks like Gracie's Graham from the old country, who doesn't seem to age, and who has the defenses around Gracie's heart melting like the snow caps in spring. This Christmas, Gracie may find more than just answers, like a warm hearth, a kind heart, and just a touch of magic. After all, there's more than one way to make a banshee scream. So I will turn it back to you, Victoria. Those were
Awesome. Thank you. I am excited. I have not actually read Gemma's stories yet, so I'm excited to get those. So the next person I'm going to hand us over to is EC Spaur. This is kind of a little bit of a new take for you too, yeah?
This is. I write, I've been building this paranormal world for a while, but I write contemporaries as Elizabeth Spaur. But this is my first paranormal being published. And I'm very excited to be a part of this crew. It was kind of weird thing for me just because we started talking about doing a cryptid Christmas and I had no idea what I was going to do. And then I started digging around. I live in the Las Vegas area and I started digging around and suddenly found this rather incredibly sexy lizard man from Henderson. So I was like, ooh, okay, a lizard man. So I wrote a lizard man for Christmas. And this is my blurb. When a gremlin told Lissa Corwin she would have to break into a top secret military installation instead of playing Christmas drinking games with her sisters, she thought the hardest part would be sealing an interdimensional portal without getting caught. She didn't count on finding an impossibly sexy lizard man who claimed she was his mate.
Awesome. I love sexy lizard man, Area 51 kind of stuff together.
Actually, it's Area 52, like Ooh. Area 51, but one scarier.
Excellent. Oh, all right. So Lulu M. Sylvian, I'm going to turn this over to you next. And we have one author missing tonight who is in a time zone that did not make it easy for us all to record at the same time. So Lulu is also going to be a proxy for DB Sieders.
Yeah, DB Sieders is in a land that has like really awesome chocolate. And we were just talking about how we needed to hit her up so she comes back and brings us all the yummy goodness. So this is her blurb. She has written about a water horse, and it fits into her Southern Elementals series that she already has. I personally am a huge fan of the one character she has named Bruce. Love Bruce, and I'm so happy because Bruce makes an appearance in this one. So this is her blurb, is never trust the Fae, or you might end up getting wet with a water horse. That's exactly what happens when Fae seer Lily McKinnon captures a sexy and mysterious Kelpie one enchanted winter night. Colin the Kelpie makes a bargain with Lily for his freedom, but after a night of magic and hot steamy romance, will she be able to let him go? So I've had the pleasure of reading that one. It is hot. And like I said, Bruce makes an appearance. Southern Elementals is a really fun series. It's got all kinds of fae, mermaids, dryads, dragons, phoenixes. It's good. It's full. Okay. Mine. So the Lulu M. Sylvian, I am now behaving as myself. Yeah, that's just weird. Sorry. I write spicy paranormal, and I have an on-running, it honestly started as a joke, but it's a lot of fun. Every Christmas, every holiday, winter holiday season, I release at least one, if not more, holiday stripper story. And they're 98% of the time male strippers. And my story included in A Very Cryptid Christmas is Horny for the Holidays. And it is definitely another holiday stripper story. And my blurb isn't quite as detailed as everybody else's. McLean, jackalope rancher and stripper, meet sexy Lindley while she's on a road trip with her sister through the wilds of Wyoming. And of course, my cryptid are jackalopes. But the romance is not with the jackalope, it's with the jackalope rancher. Because jackalopes are scary.
Jackalopes are a little scary. And when we were talking about this project initially, I was like, this lands on Lulu's, like, this is like brand for you.
Yeah. Hitting with holiday strippers is, it started off kind of as a challenge that actually DB Sieders is responsible for. And I took it, grabbed it with both hands, and just ran like I stole it. And it's been a lot of fun ever since.
Awesome. All right. So next person up is Sue Fertall. And this was a cryptid I've never heard about. So, and I'm going to guess a lot of people have never heard about. So Sue, do you want us to tell us about your story? Introduce yourself and tell us about your story.
I'm Sue Fertall, and my cryptid is the Squonk. that I heard about when I was watching a web series that has like, it puts up photos of different things. And the series was Guess Where the Cryptid Comes From for this particular one. And so it was a photo of like a dozen different cryptids, and they had to put them on a world map. And that's when I learned about the squonk from Pennsylvania, which is the saddest cryptid in the entire world. And it is the grief of the entire world. And it's so sad and so miserable and so ugly that if you see it, it will transform into tears and disappear. And so, of course, when I heard about this project, I'm from Pennsylvania and I wanted my home state cryptid. So I decided that if he was sad, if people saw him, they could just do things with a blindfold. And suddenly you have sex with a squonk. Who even knew that you would want to have sex with that sad little creature? So my story, I did not write a fabulous blurb because I'm relatively new at this. But my creature goes around with a woman coming home to deal with the death of her parents. And in her grief, the squonk feels that she is sadder than he is. Or, excuse me, they are. Squonks do not have gender. And they want to cheer her up because no one can be sadder than the squonk. And what is better to cheer up a mourning person than a fabulous fling in the woods? And hijinks ensue. And perhaps her parents were doing more than she thought behind the scenes.
Perfection. I love that we have managed to hit like all the holiday emotions people have too. Like between the stories, I think we've hit them all. So next up on my list is Wednesday Wheeler. Wednesday, do you want to introduce yourself and tell people about your story?
Yeah, thanks so much, Victoria. My name is Wednesday Wheeler. I've been a paranormal fiction fan for a long time, but just recently really got into paranormal romance, particularly during lockdown. Like, what's more distracting from the real world than reading about falling in love with a werewolf, you know? So this is my first cryptid romance story that I've written. I'm so excited to be included. So thank you all so much for having me. I usually write about a film under my academic pen name. So this is like my first fiction foray. And I was born and raised in Northern California, AKA Bigfoot country. So you can guess what my story is about. It's called Bigfoot, Bigger Heart. And it's about a dog groomer stuck working on Christmas Eve, who's in for a sexy surprise when she finds someone tall, furry, and unexpected at her station. Is Bigfoot just there for a bath or for something else?
I love it. I love it so much.
Thank you.
Right.
Yeah, I haven't had to work a retail Christmas job in a very long time, thankfully, but it's just bringing back that frustration of having to work on Christmas Eve and just trying to get people out just so you can have a darn day off.
Yep. And you might get a bonus out of it, sounds like. Awesome. So last but not least, Dane, would you like to introduce yourself and tell us about your story?
Hey, yeah. So I write as DS Dane. I do wholesome, steamy, queer BDSM romance. My story is about Krampus, which I know might straddle the line there with cryptid and demon, but it's Christmas. Be generous. My story has both whips and chains, and that tongue, though. So it's called Second Chance Krampusnacht. During a brandy-fueled holiday tryst, Sabine realizes what her small town's Christmas-obsessed mayor really is. Her neighbors owe the Christmas demon their very existence, so she dutifully keeps his secret. After 4 years away, she returns for the internationally renowned Krampusnacht parade to properly seduce him. To make him hers, she has to tell him what she knows. But will the revelation scare him away and deprive her neighbors of the magic they need to survive?
I love it. And I love Krampus. Unfortunately, I cannot show this to listeners, but we have art walls in our office. And on one of them, I have a baby Krampus with his tongue sticking out, done by Brett Manning Art, if anybody needs a baby Krampus. I love the range we have of like definitely kind of more cryptozoology cryptids all the way up to possible demons. And I'm getting a signal from Sue that I forgot to talk about my own story. So my cryptid is from Slovenia. It's called the Zlatorog, and it is basically translates to golden horn. So it's a mountain goat chamois, which is like a mountain goat. If you don't know what a chamois is, you've probably seen chamois. It's the fur from a chamois is what it is. So here's the blurb for my story. Jo Wiley has lost a lot of people. On a yearly pilgrimage of remembrance to a quiet mountain lake, she encounters a legendary beast of the Slovenian Alps, known for leading travelers to a hoard of gold or their deaths. Treasure can heal the past, but what this lively mountain goat shifter has to offer may be exactly the solstice gift Jo needs. The story is also called Climb Every Mountain Goat, because I was not going to miss the opportunity to call a story that. So I told everybody to mute so people can't see the clapping and laughter that went on, which is the one downside of having this many people on a podcast. So because our podcast always asks people a question about writing, and we always do a game of chance at the end where I roll a die and people get a topic you're not supposed to talk about, because this is a steamy romance, paranormal romance anthology. Everybody gets to talk about sex. But the first question I wanted to ask everybody is, why write about cryptids? Gemma, do you want to go first?
Yeah, so I was sort of here at the origin of all of this, and I'm not saying that it was a response to a terrible night where there was a tornado that was really close to where we all lived, but it may have had something to do with it. But one of the fun things about the cryptid conversation was that it sort of devolved into what defines cryptozoology. And because it's not an actual form of science, sorry if that's offensive to anybody, there's no hard or fast definition. And so that sort of sparked this really fun conversation about what fell under the umbrella. And I ended up texting a friend of mine who, I won't say he majored in cryptozoology because that's not a major, but he crafted a cryptozoology degree. And I texted him and I was like, hey, what is this? And he's like, whatever you want it to be. And I was like, great, let's take that. Let's run with that. And it's totally out of the realm of anything I've written before. And so I was like, you know what, this is just a really great challenge for me. I've been writing for a long time. Let's do something totally different. And it's just been the most fun. So I'm sure everyone else agrees, like, this is just really the research, the imagination, the vibes. So it's just been so much fun to delve into the world of cryptids.
No, agreed. And I love that we decided that our definition of cryptid can be expansive. And the other thing I like about this anthology is there's also, it's really like there's queer folks, there's straight folks, there's a little bit of everything in it. And it's got, something for everyone. And I appreciate that we brought diverse people to our stories as well as diverse cryptids. EC, so why write about cryptids?
Well, I was a part of that kind of Genesis conversation for this. And I distinctly remember Gemma looking at me through Zoom saying, you don't have to, if you don't have an idea, don't worry. I said, no, I'll come up with something. Because I have this paranormal world that's been simmering, which is sisters who are responsible for preventing the apocalypse by keeping a demon dimension from opening. And so Lissa is one of the sisters. And so this is kind of going to be a prequel for that bigger series when I get to it. But so I was like, okay, well, I can set something in this world. And I started doing the research. And I was like, okay, something in the area, because I told my husband about it. He's like, oh, you can set it at Area 52, like Area 51, but one's scarier. And so that kind of became the mantra for the book, for the novelette for a while. And then, like I said, I was just researching cryptids because I was trying to find something different. And the Henderson lizard man showed up on a random search, which is just this ripped lizard man with just a piece of fabric covering his from the waist down. I was like, okay, I can work with this. This will be fun. And they gave me fits. Lissa and Darrow did give me fits for a while because I'm a discovery writer, so I didn't have anything other than she's got to break into Area 52. And then all of a sudden he showed up, and I was like, okay, I can do this. So it has been a lot of fun, and I'm kind of excited now to get to that world with the other sisters.
That's exciting. And I mean, I do like that some of us like wove it into either series or worlds we already write in. Some of us kind of adapted them to one-off series like Lulu, who we'll talk next. And some of them are just standalone stories that kind of don't fit in necessarily with the other stuff folks write. So I think we all kind of stepped out and did this in different directions. But Lulu, why write about cryptids for you?
Well, as you mentioned, this totally is completely on brand for me in that I get to take paranormal and I get to take my holiday strippers and slam them together. Also, my editor last year said, you need to do the paranormal strippers again. So I was actually on strict orders that any strippers I wrote this year had to be paranormal. Which was fine because, yes, she was right. I definitely needed to get some more paranormal in there. And I've also just been wanting to write about a jackalope rancher for kicks and giggles for a while. I kept thinking, I'll have it be an Amish jackalope rancher. And I've just been playing with getting in ranchers and cowboys more. And so it was like, this is a perfect fit. Thank you. Yes, please let me do this.
Perfect. All right, Sue, you're up. So why cryptids other than we kind of roped you into this? Like you are one of the people who kind of got dragged in.
So I previously have been writing largely between mid-grade and new adult fiction. I prefer to write just something that is fantastical, not that can be in the real world, but it's not. And there's just something so lovely about a shapeshifter that can defy any sort of physics you want them to. And it just was a wonderful, complete and utter separation from any of the rules. I have a book club that I've dragged Victoria into, actually, and we read almost exclusively novels about sex, and then we argue about whether or not the actions in them are physically possible. So it was really lovely to have a book that I could write where I didn't have to worry about the physics of what his body was doing or her body was doing or their body was doing, because their body could shapeshift. And so things could happen that are not physically possible. And I didn't have to worry about any horn anatomy whatsoever. I don't know how people with horn shifters handled it. I don't understand how horn anatomy works in sex scenes to this day.
I made sure that my shapeshifter didn't have horns during sex because that's too difficult to figure out where those go.
Yeah, no, you grab them. You grab them, my friends.
There is so much visual that listeners are missing with romance writers grabbing air horns basically right now.
You got handlebars. That's something to hold on to.
There you go.
But then they talk about them being in the way in other positions. And I'm like, where did those come from? If they're handlebars that you can hold on to, then why are they in the way in a different position? Do they
why can't they lay down on their back? Right.
Yeah, why can't he lay on his back if his horns are in the front? I've had a lot of questions. There's been multiple hour-long debates. Celery and carrot sticks were involved at one point, attempting to figure out how this anatomy worked. I'm just saying, we're a very thorough book club.
I was going to say, I know a lot of writers who either act out the logistics of sex scenes, with, either kind of thinking through it, or I have actually know people who use Barbie dolls to figure this stuff out. When you involve extra body parts, it does make it more interesting to figure out where all that stuff is going to go. I agree. All right. Wednesday. Why cryptids? Because you also kind of got roped into this project.
I did. I've been friends with Dane for a while. And I heard about this opportunity and I immediately pitched myself because I've been wanting to do this for a while. Specifically, Bigfoot. There's this place called the Bigfoot Discovery Museum in Felton, California, which is near Santa Cruz. it's fascinating. It's this guy who was a Silicon Valley like tech guy who decided to open a Bigfoot museum when he retired because that's his passion. And they show like the Patterson film on a loop. And there's all of these things that are like everything you can think of, all the toys, all the drawings, all the conspiracy theories. There's maps with pins in it. And he has multiple like fossil, or what do you call it? Like when you get like the impression of the foot. And so we were talking about what cryptid we want to do. I'm like, those were some pretty big feet. Like, I know a correlation does not necessarily equal causation, but just thinking about the size of those footprints and, you know, that could be some fun stuff. Because, you know, they're living in the forest. So if there's something that you want to climb like a tree, why not a Bigfoot?
I like it. All right, Dane. So I was thinking about this. So I think DB, you and I all have magical creatures who kind of expand that cryptid limit there. So why cryptid and why Krampus?
Well, you know,
Oop, I think we lost you for a second.
Well, oh no, I froze. Okay, I'm going to start over. You know, sometimes flirting and getting to know you can be a little bit awkward or nerve-wracking. And I think there's also often that fear of rejection. And, you know, with cryptids and monsters, all that kind of goes out the window. Like Bigfoot or the Jersey Devil aren't going to mind if your joke doesn't land. And monsters don't have any chill, right? Like you don't have to wonder whether or not they like you. Like if they like you, they make it very obvious. You know, and I think that can make writing a monster protagonist so fun, because it turns out that once you remove that fear of rejection and that awkwardness from a romance story, all that's really left is the heat. So I just really enjoyed writing this. And why Krampus? I mean, again, have you seen that tongue?
Yes, I have seen that tongue. And I love that there is kind of like, there is a like a visual history of kind of sexy Krampus. Like, especially when Krampus is gender swapped as a woman or a female presenting person in Krampus imagery, there's like Krampus Dom postcards from Germany from like the 40s.
Mm-hmm.
It's an interesting spin on some of that imagery. So great. So we're going to do one more round. And this round is our game of chance question. And the topic is sex. Oh, me? They're all pointing at me again. Why does Latrog? Partly because it's easy for me to write in a world I already know. I love that I keep forgetting to include my own story. And I was trying to think of a cryptid that I wanted to write about, but I was like, okay, I'm going to keep it in Slovenia. And this was the only one I knew about in Slovenia, because in all of my Slovenian research, I never researched cryptids. So this is the one I thought. And I mean, Climb Every Mountain Goat just needed to be a story. It needed to be the title of a story. So that was the main reason. I'm not going to pretend that there wasn't a lot of Julie Andrews singing in the background while I was writing. So the last question for everybody on the topic of sex. And it's funny, when Lulu was on the show before, we talked a little bit about writing sex scenes in public and how awkward that can be sometimes, to think about people reading over your shoulder or thinking about what you're writing while someone else may or may not be paying attention to you. So my question for everybody is, like, what would be, or what has been, the worst possible place you could write a sex scene in a public or semi-public setting? Gemma, let's start with you.
I don't know what awkwardness you're talking about. Apparently I'm shameless. Apparently I have no shame when this is concerned. Well, I will say these were not sexy books. I read under another pen name, but for a while I was working on a series when I was teaching after school, and I would just like be writing on my phone while I was waiting for the kids to get out of class. But I did limit myself to which particular books, because, you know, you just have to be in the right mindset. That's not the right mindset. But I did work on the Cowboy series. I went out to Yellowstone a couple summers ago, and I just finished one of my Cowboy Menage series. And I was like, I think I'm done with Montana. I'm done with that part of the country. Like, I don't really know much about it. I'm not that interested. My Badlands story disproves that, obviously. But I got out to Yellowstone and I was like, fuck, I'm not done with it. I'm writing a 7-book Cowboy BDSM ranch series. And I was on that trip with my family, and I was working on it in the car because, there's big stretches of time where you don't really have any cell service or anything else to do. And I was like, so what do you guys think about the name like this and this? And they were like, Ruby, you have to stop. And I was like, I'm sorry, Gemma, you have to stop. Yeah, I'm not great at that. But it was definitely like writing it in the actual place where the stories were taking place added so much more to it. So no shame. I don't know who has shame. I don't have any shame. You can give me some of your shame. So maybe I won't do inappropriate things in public, I guess.
But you're kind of out as like a steamy erotica writer with your family. Like you have family members who actually help with like book covers and stuff, right?
I do. And, I come from a family of artists. So there's never that question of like, oh my God, what is she doing? I'm like, I picked a commercial art form. Y'all can get in line. Like I'll pay for copy. But I do have the line, like some of my books are the ones that grandma can read. Like this is the pen name grandma can read. And this is the pen name grandma can't read. And sometimes she's just like, oh, I like your book so much, but I just wish it didn't have all that sex in it. And I'm like, read the other ones. This one is all sex. But yeah, no. And I was with my cousins and they're all really cool. And I think it's really cool that I do this, but I will say like writing in the place where the books take place just makes all the difference. It really does.
That's pretty awesome to be able to do that. Yeah. I have gotten to do that a little bit when traveling in Slovenia. Get to write like while you're there, looking at the actual mountains you're writing about is kind of a cool thing. So not a bad way to go. And you can also use it as a tax write-off. Pro tip right there. Okay. AC, so what about you? What's the most awkward place you have or can think of to write a sex scene in public?
Well, for what I've actually written, I actually stick to my office. I don't write outside. I mean, I do when I'm like traveling, I'll write in my hotel room or whatever, but I tend to write, except when my office was the living room and the family room, and I sat in front of the TV and had to like have my husband over my shoulder. But that he doesn't read fiction, so he doesn't read any of my stuff anyway. He's like one of those, he cannot suspend disbelief. But I have to think if I had actually, I did try to do a little writing when I was on a family vacation a couple of years ago, but with my dad's family, which is Mennonite. And so I don't think I couldn't really get myself in the mood to write sex scenes on that trip. I mean, I was sitting there and my aunts were kind of grabbing copies of my book, which was that first one out was an anthology, which had no sex in my little novella. It was just a little 1950s Vegas girl. And, but I'm handling this romance to my Mennonite aunts like, so that was probably for me, but if I'm not embarrassed by my writing. So if someone's reading over my shoulder, I'd probably be more embarrassed about the typos than the sex.
Yeah. I've often found that I haven't written sex scenes in public so much as actually murdering people in the books. And I'm always worried that someone's going to look over my shoulder and go, what is she writing? All right, Lulu, you're up. And you and I already talked about this. So this is a little bit of a reprise for you.
Yeah, I also have DB's answer. And apparently she used to write with SpongeBob on TV around her kids. So she said it made that meme of Patrick Starr in tall boots and fishnets extra funny for her because she's used to writing sex scenes with SpongeBob. And I just feel so relieved that I didn't ever have to do that.
Yeah, she we all have a chat that we're on together, and she sent an image, and now that's never not going to be in my head.
No, never not. For myself, when my children were younger, they played sports ball, and I would ditch them at the arena, and I would go write at Bread Cafe, and I was always concerned that like my screen would magically start reading everything, start giving you the voiceover on what's on the screen. Because, if you hit that one keyboard command, it will start talking to you for accessibility. So I was always afraid that would happen, or the letters would get really big and that busboy 3 tables behind me could all of a sudden read what I was writing. So it's just kind of like, otherwise nobody's paying any lick of attention to me. But the second I write cock, I'm like, oh God, somebody's going to walk up. Because I have paranoia issues over things like that.
No, I think it's understandable. Yeah, my horror was always because there was one coffee shop when we lived in Knoxville that I liked to write in, and I always liked to get a seat against the wall. And occasionally I would have to sit at one of the tables that was not against the wall, and that was just so much harder for me to write because I just knew people would look over my shoulder, and I have to write pretty big because my eyesight is terrible, so it's like fairly easier to read. And I was like, great. I'm either like multiple people are having sex, or somebody's getting their heart ripped out of their chest. Yeah. Great.
So the place where I would go, it's a chain, and the single tables or the single person tables were always right by the big window. So it's like, not only that, but I'm going to have somebody walk by. And I was a key location for private school drop-off, where other kids coming to and from their sports ball practices. And I was just like, oh, if this is, It never happened. And there's actually no logical reason for it to happen because my computer isn't set to read things out loud. But yeah, giant plate glass window, all the people who...
It's the writer's imagination getting the best of you.
Absolutely.
That's just what it is. Sue, so writing sex scenes or perhaps murder in public.
I intentionally chose to start my sex scene in the break room at work, which I work in a retail position. We usually have about 50 people on staff for the day. And I chose to sit in the chair that's in the middle of the room, not any of the three against the wall. So I have Gemma's no shame. I was like, read over my shoulder, do it. It'll make it even better. Like, I was just like, yes, this is it. Somebody's going to read this over my shoulder and I'm going to have to explain to somebody what's going on. Like, please ask me for details about what that squonk is doing. I am so prepared to tell you about their shape-shifting genitalia. Like, please let me talk to you about this. None of my coworkers read over my shoulder. I was a little disappointed. I did make my partner read it though. So I at least got somebody who knows me to read my sex scene before I chose to share it with anybody. But I am also known for talking about murder out loud graphically. Apparently, I have a good imagination for visceral body horror, and 3 of my male coworkers are not speaking to me today after I told them exactly how I would sever their cremaster. So don't ask me who you don't want to fight at work if you don't want me to explain to you why it's me in graphic detail. That's all I'm saying. I have very little shame. I believe firmly that conversations that are taboo should usually be had, and I'm willing to talk about them with you in a respectful manner.
So are you sure not a Scorpio?
I'm not. I'm a Gemini, so I'm a little bit everywhere. Yeah, like I have zero shame. And my parents haven't read this, and hopefully my dad won't.
So I can edit this out if you don't want this in here, but another layer of Sue having no shame is her partner is also my offspring. So we have, like that whole connection. So technically not really her mother-in-law has read her story.
I have no problem with sharing that information because, I am totally fine with that. My lovely partner is very much supportive of this, and his mother is too. So, and as a result, she probably being in the book club with me where we discuss how carrots and celery align, knows more about my sex life than the average human being as well, which, I have no shame.
And by default, I can have none either.
Yeah. I got consent first. For those of you who have no shame like me, you should get consent from the individual that you are oversharing with so that you're not traumatizing them. Victoria and I had a consent conversation about this before she joined book club because there was a warning of like, we're reading your book for book club. We would like you to attend because you're the author. And if you want to hang out with us, you can, But just so you know, we discuss sex at book club, and usually who we're having with factors into that conversation.
Yes.
So just, I'm a big fan of consent. You'll probably notice that theme if you read my story.
And I will say you will also notice that theme if you read all of our work. None of us are really into not consent kind of stuff. So if that's your jam, you're going to be looking in the wrong place reading our stuff. So unless it's consensual non-consent, that can happen in BDMS stories. That's a whole different thing. So great. For those who are listening and can't watch the group, I was getting hand signals from a couple of our erotica writers. It's like, oh, by the way, consensual non-consent. It's like, yes, that is a thing. Great. All right. So Wendy, I don't know how many times you've had to write sex scenes in public, or if you haven't. So if you haven't, you can use your imagination and tell us where that would be the most horrible place for that to happen.
Well, I did work a little bit on this in the doctor's waiting room, which was a little weird because, if you go to a GP, there's all kinds of people there, no children, but, like adult, I should specify adult people. And since COVID lockdown, the waits have just been forever. So I'm just going to bring this with me and work on it. So I didn't write any sex scenes at the doctor's office, but I definitely edited them. And I don't know about the rest of you, but if it's a good scene that I have written, I personally get excited about it. So then I start thinking, am I going to go into the doctor's office and she's going to be like, what were you reading? Because your pupils are dilated and you're flushed and your heartbeat, or she's going to think I'm on drugs or something. But everything was fine. Nobody could tell. Nobody cared.
Well, I mean, I cannot speak for everybody, but, I am a fan of the, when you're writing something sad, if there's no tears in the author, there's probably not going to be any tears in the reader. So I think that also applies to, if you're writing something sexy and you don't find that a turn on, your readers probably aren't going to either. So makes total sense to me, which is why I think sometimes it is difficult to write sex scenes in public, because if you get flushed, what are people going to think you're either reading or writing on your, your laptop or your notebook or whatever? So possibilities abound. Dane, again, last but not least.
Yeah, I'm also one of those consent fetishist brazen hussies. I'm in that same club with the rest of y'all. So for me, I also have very little shame. I will bust out the laptop or the phone wherever I am. The weirdest place that I have written a sex scene is probably at a Wednesday 13 concert. It was during the opening act. The opening act was really bad. I mean, bless them. You really should give everyone a chance. But it was so bad, I couldn't sit through it. So I went to the back and popped open my phone and throughout some sex lines. And I just feel like, if you're spying on someone else's screen, that's its own punishment, or reward, however you see it. You're welcome.
Well, that is a great way to look at it too. Well, I want to thank all of you for being on the show. Again, they want me to talk about my own sex. I think I did kind of in riffing off people, but really it's like sitting in a coffee shop, not against the wall with my giant font, thinking, okay, and the other thing is, for people who are reading the book, there is a range of steaminess in these stories. And my story is not particularly steamy by most standards. I'm all the way up to pretty spicy in this anthology. And so when I'm writing for my regular novels, the sex scenes aren't that spicy, but I do like to use appropriate language for them. And that's my fear, is that, somebody with their toddler getting a latte and a cookie is going to come up behind me and go, Mom, why does her screen say blah, blah, blah? And, her mom have a little freak out there in the coffee shop about what a horrible person I am for exposing their child to sex in public. And I'm like, well, she can read. You should be proud of that. So there we are. But I do want to thank everybody for being on the show. This is definitely unusual, both kind of for our format at WitchLit and having this many people on at one time. So I'll kind of give everybody an opportunity to let you kind of say who you are again, maybe talk about one of your other books real quick, and then we'll wrap it up.
Okay, well, Victoria, thank you again for having us. This is so exciting. And it's been such a joy to work with all of the people in this group. And I think that joy and that imagination and that sense of identity and queerness and joy and all of it just comes through in this series so much, at least in the stories that I've read so far. And I just really hope that y'all guys are going to really enjoy it because it's just so much fun. My name is Gemma Snow. That's where you can find my steamy erotic stuff, gemmasnow.com. I'm currently in grad school for environmental work, and my next book features an environmental scientist getting down to clown because you can do two things at once, save the world and have really great sex. And that book is called Wild Cowboy. It's the second in my Sinclair 7 series, which features BDSM ranch out in the wilds of Montana, and that's coming out in November. So that's where you can find me.
Awesome. EC?
I thank you again for having us. This has been fun. The whole thing has been fun from the very first conversation about cryptids and hey, should we write an anthology up until now, and I'm sure into the future. I have not written anything else as EC Spaur, any other paranormals, but if you're interested in contemporaries, I have a world that is ever expanding. My Gridiron Night series is out and it's complete. It's a 6-book series, and I am about to put the 3rd book in my King's Folly series, Love's Folly, out, and that one has been a lot of fun. It's given me a little bit of fits, but it features the heroine is a obstetrician who focuses on high-risk pregnancies and has a lot to say about maternal mortality rates. So there's a little bit of a soapbox in there, but there's also a little bit of snark and small-town romance and a hero who doesn't think he's worthy of her, but figures it out in the end.
Awesome. And we are all about getting on your soapbox here. I always joke with guests that I will happily polish it for you. So, Lulu, what are you up to?
I'm gonna pimp DB Sieders real quick. Again, her Southern Elemental series. It is fantastic. Love it. Bruce rocks. She also has another management of the underworld series, and I'm bad friend in that I'm not remembering titles right now.
Yeah, it's Demon Hunters in Nashville, but I can't remember the name of the series. But the first book is Catching Hell.
Yeah. That's
Raising Hell, Catching Hell. I think those are the two. I can't remember which order they're in, but right. I have had the pleasure to read them both, and they're awesome. So
yeah, they're good. They are good. I'm sometimes bad with titles. That happens. I am Lulu M. Sylvian. You can read other holiday strippers. I have 2 collections of those shorts. The first one is The 12 Strippers of Christmas, and then the second one is 10 Things I Hate About Yule. Those are the holiday strippers, and then I have paranormal series with Wolf Shifters, and I have a Why Choose Polly series called Wetwater Falls. The full trilogy is The Wolves of I can't even say it. The Wolves of Wetwater Falls, and I am currently writing The Witches of Wetwater Falls, which will be another mini series. I have some short story mini series out in various anthologies right now, and I've got shifters, I've got ghosts, and you can find me online, lulumsylvian.com. That'll pretty much that combination of name will pretty much find me on TikTok and Facebook.
Awesome.
And Instagram.
All right, Sue.
I do not have any other published work for folks to go searching for. I have a terrible Twitter and Instagram feed. I am an awful photographer. I have 7 cats that are featured heavily on my Instagram feed. All of my social is under Bufeq, which is BUFEQ, because I thought I would look around my bedroom and pick the first letter of different things I saw. So that was a bear, a unicorn, I believe a fairy was the F, but I could be wrong on that, an elephant, and a quilt. Because I was 12 and thought I was really cool. So that is still my handle, though, because nobody has taken it in all these years, and it's still easy to find me that way. So if you want terrible photos of cats, that's where to find me, and eventually future information about additional works coming there soon.
Yes, awesome. Wednesday?
Sue, this is my first published work. I'm trying to figure out what I want to do next. I really enjoyed playing in the Bigfoot sandbox, so might do some more of that. I'm Wednesday Wheeler, Wednesday like the day, Wheeler as in to wheel, and Facebook and Twitter and Instagram at that Wednesday WHEELR, no final E. And
Awesome.
I'm just really happy to be a part of this and hope everybody enjoys the story.
Awesome. And Dane.
Yeah, hi, I'm DS Dane. So I'm a queer romance author of really high steam books and serial reads. That serial app money is really good with BDSM themes. Most of my favorite tropes are sort of in the hurt, comfort, obsession and longing, sex club, found family, relationships between queer and straight people and all the drama that can kind of stir up, revenge, martial arts, which I know is sort of like the weird little thing out in the corner, but love some martial arts, revenge, and love in hopeless places or situations. And you can find me at dsdanebooks.com. And I'm also on all the socials as DS Dane.
Awesome. And listeners know me, and my deeds are always at the bottom of the show notes. But for folks who may just be picking this up, I'm Victoria Raschke, and my first series is the Voices of the Dead series. I write contemporary fantasy. I have not published romance in any genre. I just love that romance and erotica writers let me hang out with them because they're cool, and they're the backbone of the publishing industry. And they honestly are supporting everybody else's writing by selling lots and lots of books. And if you don't like romance, I'm telling you, you're missing out. And there's something out there for everybody who likes to read.
Yes.
Thank you. Yes, that was my soapbox. And I'll have everybody's deets in the show notes. So the notes will be really long on this one. We do a transcript for every episode for folks who can't listen or don't want to listen. And again, I just want to thank you guys for being on the show. And I just want to say that, soapboxy wise, it is a weird time out there, and it is so good to find your people. And I hope all the other writers and readers who are listening to the show also get that opportunity. So thanks.